and gentlemen, this is Nick Smith. We're here at NSM 2024. We're counting down the days to NAB. And in order to do so, we're going to bring some different folks on. And today, I am lucky enough to have Tod from Netgear here to talk about what in the world's going on in the switching sphere, the space.
Well, thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, man. All right, so listen, I mean, Netgear, you guys are sort of ubiquitous now, not to, make fun of somebody else, right? But you're sort of like the staple in the AV over IP market. Why? Help people, if you haven't looked at a Netgear, what did you do that just had everybody come just run into your doorstep?
Well, for one, we use AV language. We build profiles for AV equipment, so easy onboarding, profile selection when you're VLANing a switch. But really with the M4250 series, we gained a lot of ground, let's just say. One, for ease of use, one, very capable switches, but easy to configure with our Engage software. And our interop partners add up to about 240 these days, so we make sure it's interoperable with a wide variety of equipment used in the workflow.
Yeah, I mean, the number of partners and profiles that you've built into these are phenomenal. And that's why we love it, because we're a big NDI house. We're playing with all the AV over IP standards. And the fact that I can just pick the profile for the manufacturer I'm working with and apply it to the whole switch and not have to do a bunch of hex and ASCII codes and all this crazy configuration.
We still allow access to command line interface. So if you want to get in deep, why
would you? When it's all right there with just simple
But for
touches.
those really heavy duty guys, it's an option.
So you're new to the company. You're kind of coming at this, but you're here for a specific reason with Netgear. Talk to me about what you're doing and what you're building.
So I was brought on as the senior broadcast BDM. So I'm helping them develop into the broadcast space. Now, we're doing that with a couple different things. One, with higher bandwidth ports. Our M4350, the two top models, have SMPTE 2110 capability. They're 40 ports of 10 gig or 16 ports of 25 gig, nice. Both with 400 gig uplinks. So we keep building beefier switches, but also the adoption of that 2110 uncompressed video, you need a bigger switch for that.
Yeah, and I guess if most people don't know, 2110 is, it's like, take NDI and quadruple it effectively, right? We're talking, minimum 10 and 25 gig connections.
Correct.
And so it takes a lot more bandwidth, which explains why you've got 100 gig uplinks,
right? Because
you got to aggregate that data to go from switch to switch or directly into a switcher.
And when you add switches with our Netgear AV switch line, we have that auto lag as well. So as you build your topology, it's easy. It sets up the same way the previous switch was set up.
Yeah, they're aware of each other, right?
They're aware, yeah.
They know
there's some auto detection going on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, right. So what are the big changes that have to happen in the switching fabric to enable 2110? Because I guess a lot of these AV over IP standards, they're pretty, I don't want to say basic, right? But they don't require a lot of P2P and other things. So talk to me about some of the issues that come into doing 2110.
So when you add the 2110, our switches can act as master clock and boundary clock. So that PTP synchronization is essential. And again, 2110 is uncompressed video. Of course, there's IPMX with varying degrees of compression. But we have that 2110 to set up the clock synchronization is really the best way to explain it.
Yeah, and I guess that's really important because it's about timing. When you get into 2110, you're working in a broadcast environment, you need all signals to sort of arrive correctly together,
and be in
right?
sync.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
To be in sync constantly. And
now, NDI also has features such as that, but there's a very specific way you need to do it with 2110.
Correct. And so traditionally, you would buy another component to be the clock, to be the P2P timing, so to speak. But you're building it into the switch.
Right, so we can follow, we can be the boundary clock, but you can also set within the Engage software to be the master clock. So with smaller, medium-sized studios, a clock is a very expensive proposition. And to be honest with you, SMPTE 2110 has been a very expensive proposition for studios.
It's actually kept people out of it. I think this is why NDI sort of got adopted so quickly and by so many studios because it was affordable.
And we love NDI. Yeah. We work with them quite a bit on making sure the newest standards are adopted. But NDI is used in broadcast quite a bit.
Amazingly so.
Right. Yeah. So as we know, broadcast and Pro AV emerging. You have broadcast guys using Pro AV equipment and vice versa. We support all the profiles, and some of my colleagues like to say we're the plumbing, but that's kind of a grotesque explanation, I think, but there's certain ways you need to set up the plumbing to make sure everything's flowing and not non-stopping, what we call non-stopping and high efficiency.
Well, it's interesting because, let's say 10, 15 years ago, you would buy a big router that had, 40, 50, 100 BNCs on it, and that was your plumbing. And now it's a network switch. It's a couple RUs of space.
Well, my history started in SDI workflows, so we started adding quite a bit more NDI and IP, AV over IP, so I was very familiar with it. But these days, especially with SMPTE 2110 and what NDI is doing, they're bringing what everybody liked in the SDI workflows, reliability, the clock, Genlock syncing, and that kind of thing, to AV over IP. So our switches will be comparatively lower priced, very capable, but also easy onboarding of switches and adding switches to the workflow. So we like to say we want to democratize the cost of 2110.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And some of the original, I would say, switch manufacturers in the 2110 space, these are $50,000 to $100,000 switchers.
End up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, massive network switches. So they get very, very expensive very quickly. And I guess if you get a large facility, that may be acceptable. But I don't think that those are some of the things that have kept people out of 2110.
And I think with our price points and capability, we're gonna, and with the talk of the last few trade shows, 2110 is expanding quickly, and for all the advantages it brings.
Let's talk about that. So, because I think that's an interesting one because it's not new. It's been around for 10 plus years now, right? Where's the adoption? Where are you seeing the net new adoption come from?
A lot more in small to medium-sized studios. Facebook, Google, these guys have studios as well as IT infrastructure, right? So putting AV over the network for studio synchronization at different locations, there really is going to be because the price is coming down and because it's becoming easier to understand, and we're trying to make it easy to onboard.
Do you think there's a little bit there that the peripherals are available now too? Because if we jump back, let's say 5, 10 years ago, you had to have an encoder to get anything into 2110.
Right.
And it seems like now you've got companies like Panasonic and others that are starting to build modules in their cameras.
Correct.
So we're seeing 2110 at the origination source.
Yeah,
now.
but I think it's a combination of things too. I think broadcast guys are learning the AV over IP infrastructure a lot more. It took them a while. A lot of people had to learn it quickly during the pandemic. But now you have a lot more engineers understanding it more, so they're adopting it more, and the price is coming down, like I was saying. Now, again, we like NDI, IPMX, SRT. We're working on 6C and other codecs, so we want to make sure we're interoperable with all the codecs that are out there.
All right, let's talk about IPMX. Where are you seeing the uptick on that? It seems like that's sort of the new kid on the campus right now.
So the thing with IPMX, it's more flexible in that you can either have uncompressed video, and we know the advantages of uncompressed video, but also slight compression. You don't necessarily need to use the PTP if you don't need it. You can if you do. It's kind of an offshoot of 2110. So it really kind of, I want to say maybe a bridge to 2110 more.
I see it sort of as the 2110 for the masses.
Right.
Right. The people who maybe don't have the infrastructure.
You may not need full 2110 studio, right? IPMX offers a lot more flexibility, and one of our biggest interop partners is Matrox, and they're investing heavily in IPMX protocols and adoption, and they have something unique with their encoders that you can daisy chain their encoders, which is very, very unique. And we actually showed it working at the ISC show in Barcelona last week.
Nice. Yeah, it was fun. We had Ron from Matrox on the podcast about a month or so ago to talk about what they did at the Sphere.
Yes,
and utilizing
IPMX
right? all inside the Sphere.
Right.
Really phenomenal, and I'm assuming you all were somewhere inside of there as well.
Yeah, they're a great partner of ours, and they have our equipment, we have theirs in our lab, so we want to make sure everything they're doing is supported through our AV over IP switches.
Well, and I guess that's what I love about Netgear right now, and it's still a little bit of I guess people are still kind of coming to grips with who you guys are now,
right?
Compared to, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago, which is like consumer or business switches that nobody ever sees or talks to. Now you guys are at the forefront of all these great media and entertainment workflows.
And by the way, we also have a router, a pro router. We also have Wi-Fi 7 access points. So if you need to add a Wi-Fi access point to a switch, it's easy with PoE, plug in and set up a Wi-Fi system. Whether that's small studio or medium-sized studio, or even live production, to have that Wi-Fi accessibility is important.
Yeah, and especially, for monitoring, for looking at the tools and the assets, and not having to bridge out to the rest of your system. You can't always be connected over a wire.
Well, you don't also need that huge bandwidth necessarily, too. It might just be commands.
Right.
It might be lighting. It might just be audio. The M4350 series for us is really when you're adding that video over the network, you want those larger switches.
So one of probably the most exciting stories I see coming out of switching right now is, and it's kind of a weird thing, but it's PoE-based lights.
Yes.
And I'm really excited for, with all these new LED modules, the ability to get more light out of less power.
Right.
Right? And then to see
Well, you're familiar with ICANN?
That's exactly where I was going to go. So what ICANN is doing right now with PoE lights tying into a Netgear switch, where it's now power and, protocol or control,
right,
all back to the switch, and then, run that from anywhere.
Well, a unique feature of our 4350s is that you can add that power redundancy and also build the power budget. So we have one internal power supply, we have a second modular power supply you can add to it, and a third. So you can build up your PoE budget to over 1,000 watts on that system, and up to 90 watts per port. Nice. So PoE plus.
Crazy. Well, so what's exciting for you coming into this year? What are you really looking for in terms of change and growth? And, we're coming into NAB and IBC and all the great broadcast shows.
Yep.
What do you think you're going to see out there this year?
From what I can tell, 2110 is going to be adopted in wider scale. And like we talked about previous, it's more affordable.
Yeah.
People understand it more. And if they do need that time sync and the SMPTE range, our two top switches are probably most exciting for me, but also in the pipeline, we have larger switches in development. So all the way up to 400 gig and 100 gig ports. Primarily on the 4350s, the 100 gig ports are used for uplinks, but we'll also have models that have 100 gig coming out late.
So you're going to really be able to get into the true spline and leaf kind of design of network switching.
Right, and we can operate on the in spine and leaf, but on the periphery, we can become the master clock for smaller, medium-sized studios. So that's going to be the most exciting part for me.
That's a lot of cost savings to the customer. I mean, those
Absolutely.
are things like, that was an expensive GPS module, that had to be bought to jump into 2110, and now it's right in your box.
Well, if you look at the price of encoders for 2110, they've come down significantly. So I think that's going to drive adoption much more, but we support all of it. So whether it's 2110 IPMX, NDI, all the new things happening with NDI, we work very closely with them and excited about what's coming out in that codec.
Love it. All right, well, you got it all here first. It's been Tod with Netgear talking about all the things they're doing in the broadcast world, in the AV over IP world. Tod, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Stay tuned for more videos like this one coming up on the show soon. We'll see y'all next time.